Welcome to Making Managing Easier, where we talk about the actionable behaviors that managers need to do to build great teams and get results. Today, I'm not going to talk directly about the manager. I'm actually going to talk about something that impacts the manager and how they need to understand it and react to it. Before we begin, I want to remind you to like, comment, and subscribe to this YouTube channel, so that the only way we can grow this community and really help managers is if we share this and make this as easy to find as possible. So, one of the things that we don't really talk about too much, but we need to understand is really the manager takes the executive strategy that they put together, whatever the business needs are, they get that and they translate that and they go down to the employee, right? Now, the manager is the only touch point between this and this. Too often, people think the executives are getting it down to this level, but they're not. When executives say, the employee's looking at the manager and saying, hey, what does this mean? So as that touch point, they need to be aware of that. Now, that does not mean that there isn't a relationship between the executive level and the employee level. There is. And that's where a lot of the troubles for managers come in. And that's what we're going to talk about a lot. So today is part one of a three-part series. Today I'm going to talk about that relationship between the executives and the employees and where it goes wrong. Part two, I'm going to talk about what the manager needs to understand about that and how to react with employees. And then part three will be what the manager needs to understand and communicate to the executive level. So, how do they understand that managing up part? So what really got me thinking about this topic in a lot of detail was an article I read called Millionaire and Billionaire CEOs Say Thousands of Laid Off Tech Staff Just Did Fake Work. I'll put a link to the article in the comments, and you can read the article for yourself. But in the end, it comes out to make CEOs of these companies sound like just complete jackasses and saying clueless things. So 3 takeaways that I got from the article. Companies overhired for vanity purposes. They want to say, look how big our company's getting, which is a stupid thing to do. The CEOs are to blame for that, but the employees suffer. Second takeaway really was that, companies hired for fake work. And the reason was they didn't want talented people to go to a competitor. So they hired these people, brought them in, and figured, we'll just have them do stuff that doesn't really need to be done. Again, incredibly stupid. The CEO is to blame for that, but the employees suffer. And then last is, and we see this a lot, CEOs and executives think they're the only ones that work hard. They have the hard job. It's that, bias because it's close to them. They don't see everything else that goes on. Again, it's silly. There's no proof for it, and employees suffer. So when a CEO goes, we don't need this many people, they're not working hard, we'll just get rid of some and get people in here who work hard. We have to acknowledge the inherent conflict between that executive level and the employees. There's a lot of talk about, things like, we're all in the same boat, we've got the same mission, we're rowing in the same direction. And it's just not true. There are huge differences in expectations and, values that go on between those two roles. It's not you're all working towards the same thing. It's more of like the TV show Survivor. There are uneasy alliances that are going on. It's on a much bigger scale than the 15 contestants on Survivor or whatever it is. Now, this doesn't have to be the case. There are instances of companies that aren't like that. But I'm going to tell you, those are probably very, very small companies. We're talking under 50 employees. And, they're just rare. The majority of cases are going to have that conflict. And managers need to accept it. You can't try and go, well, we'll fix the conflict. We'll make sure there's no conflict there. It doesn't happen that way. So managers need to understand that, accept it, and move in that direction. All right, so first, let's look at why this occurs. It's important to understand that the executives level think in the macro world, right? They're thinking of the entire company. They're thinking, for all intents and purposes, not on a personal level. They're not looking at people. They're looking at numbers, right? They're looking at how many people we have, how much does salary cost, what are our expenses, very macro level. Employees live in the micro, okay? They're thinking about themselves, their team, their manager, that little bit, okay? So they're going, well, is that good for me? Is that good for my team? Is that good for my coworkers? They're not thinking in the big level. They're seeing things at a very personal level. Now, I'm not making a judgment on either. I think both need to be there, but we have to get out of this fantasy world that it doesn't exist. Executives are thinking about the company in a different way, in a non-personal way. And that's okay. We just have to understand where that's coming from. So a couple examples. I don't know how many of you out there have ever seen the movie North Dallas 40. It was a great movie from the 70s about a professional football team. And there's this one scene that I always love that resonates. The coach says something and one of the players just kind of explodes on him. And he says, every time I call it a business, you call it a game. And every time I call it a game, you call it a business. What is it? Right? And the point is, the executive is saying, the coach is saying what he needs to motivate them. He's thinking at the macro level. I need you to do a certain thing, so I'm going to express a certain message. And the player's going, you're giving me conflicting things. What is it? Right? Because one's thinking macro, how do I get results? One's thinking micro, what's it mean to me? Another example, and we're hearing this a lot lately with the return to office discussion, argument, debate, whatever you want to call it. But there's a lot of talk about leverage. Companies were afraid to push people back to the office because if people quit, they wouldn't be able to rehire. The market was tight. But now the market's opening up for labor, so they're going, well, we have more leverage to be able to tell them what we want. If you're talking leverage, you're not thinking about people, okay? You're not going, we're rowing in the same direction, right? And employees who go, hey, it's an open market and I can go look at this stuff. They're thinking of leverage too. They may not be saying the word, but they're thinking of that leverage. What's occurring is, they aren't on the same page. They have different values. They have different goals. They have different things. They create this alliance to work together, but it's not really there. So when executives say things like I said, that coach, how he was always switching the message, should we blame them for lying? Yes and no. But the fact of the matter is, we make them, employees, I should say, make them do it once in a while, right? Think about it this way. Let's say a CEO stood up and said, look, we need employees to get this stuff done. But the fact of the matter is, profits are the most important thing. And when push comes to shove and profits are in danger, employees are the first place I'm going to cut. It's the biggest expense we have, and it's the easiest way for me to save money. That executive would get pillared by the press. Employees would hate that executive. They would just crush them. But it's the truth. So in other words, we don't want executives to tell us the truth. And executives are afraid to tell us the truth. Okay? They say things like, employees are our most valuable asset. Well, guess what? When you need to save money and the company's, not as profitable, you don't get rid of your best asset. You get rid of the most expensive thing. That's what employees are to them. That's what they see them. So, should executives tell us the truth? Of course they should. Employees, we should accept the truth and not make them say this kumbaya stuff. We want to be a family. We want us all working together. Those type of. That's not the way it works. I mean, look at these tech companies who's gone through all these rounds of layoffs lately. The thing that I like to point out is they say, we need to do this because of profitability. It's true and it makes sense. But what they're not saying is we were making a good profit before. We weren't in danger of not making a profit. Disney just laid off 10,000 people. or 7,000 people is what they're working on. Disney made 28 billion in profit last year, 21 billion the year before. Laying off 7,000 people isn't the difference between, a profit and losing money. It's between how profitable it is, right? So again, executives say what they have to say to get you to do. And they say this a lot because as employees, we demand it. If they told us the truth, we would not like them. We wouldn't work as much. So we've got to start getting into this more realistic relationship. And some of you will be going, yeah, but when they lay it off, we have that feeling. So why don't they tell us the truth at first? Because if they told you the truth, they would get crushed all the time. Layoffs tend to be a small hit, right? They get a bad day in the press. They get, a couple rough days of figuring it out, but it goes away, right? It kind of fades off. Our attention span is pretty short as people. So they get into that point. So most executives go, you know what? It's better if I, take that short-term hit for the long-term gain. And that's really what they're doing. So with this reality, what should change? First of all, we should have executives and employees starting being more honest about this relationship. And they should be rewarded for telling the truth. Now, telling the truth doesn't have to be done in a harsh, cruel way. It can be done in an honest, straightforward, polite way, right? So we need executives to be honest and say, you know what? The company comes first. I think about this in terms of the company level, right? That's what I do. And when it comes down to my job is to make profits, and my job is to make more profits. So when push comes to shove, the employees are going to pay the brunt of it. And that's just the way it works. And we're going to do this, and I'm going to treat you well because that helps me. But understand that this is the way it works. But employees need to be honest as well. We need to understand this relationship. We need to start making it out like these are bad people. These executives, they don't care about people. They're bad people. No, they're doing their job. And most people who start at the employee level and work their way up, they get to that point and we're like, they forgot how it was to be us. No, it's just a different expectation, and we have to be brutally honest about that. Okay? Understand that the benefits your company offers you is not because they want to. Those are expensive. They would love to not pay those. Trust me. They offer them because they know it's a way to keep you. They know it's something they need to do as part of this agreement. So when benefits time come up, ask for the benefits that are going to help you in your career. Go beyond health care and mental health care and start talking, what are you doing in development? Right? Because if you let me go, I want to have marketable skills, better working conditions, right? I'm not going to give 80 hours of my life to this company and then have them let me go. I want to have work-life balance. And we have to start being honest about that and saying, you know what? It's not that I'm not working hard. Executives need to also understand that too, right? If I go, man, I don't want to work 80 hours a week. I want to work 40 to 50 because I want to have a family life and I want to do all these other things. It doesn't mean you're lazy. It doesn't mean the work ethic is gone, right? It's reality. Employers had the leverage for so long, they took advantage of it. When I was first coming up, it was assumed you were going to work 60, 70, 80-hour weeks to establish your footing and stuff like that. This younger generation doesn't think like that. And I will say this, my generation was wrong. This younger generation has much better mindset about it. Okay? Now, do I think this will change, that employers and employees will start being really brutally honest with themselves and each other? No. I don't think it's going to change in my lifetime. So because of that, it's important for managers to understand how to balance that. One of the reasons managing is so difficult is because you are essentially serving two distinct groups. You are the focal point. You're the one that touches these two, but these two groups have very different needs. So it's sometimes, and they conflict, right? So sometimes it's impossible to say, if I do this, I'll make both sides happy. I'd say most times it's high. So you've got to figure out a way to do that. So that's what we're going to talk about in parts 2 and 3. How do I navigate with the employees? How do I navigate with the employers to do that? So I hope you like this discussion, and I hope it got you thinking a little bit, maybe outside of the box of some things. Remember, like, comment, subscribe if you found any of this valuable. I'll be releasing part 2 soon so that we can continue this discussion. So go out and be a great manager.